In today's episode of Dolly Designs, I'm going to be revamping these stands. I make my own stands. I have been for about 9 years now, almost 10, and they're made from baseboard, so like what you put around the room, and wooden dowels. So the cool thing is you can sand them down and repurpose them when you want to either redo a stand because you don't like it, or maybe you don't need the stand anymore for that particular doll. That's what I'm doing in this video. I'll put a link to my formal tutorial on how I make these if you want to see. And I also have other videos on making doll stands in this Dolly Design series. These are all pretty old stands of mine, way back in 2011 up until about 2012 or 2013. I had a few of my vintage Barbies or reproductions on display in my room where my Bratz babies currently live, and these are the stands I made for them, some of them. I have a few downstairs that I will reuse when I need them. And then I have this stand for one of my Beast dolls that I just really don't like, and I've currently put him away. I still have all of these dolls, mind you. They're just the vintage dolls I don't put on display anymore, and I did some rearranging on my Disney shelf. So I have some backlog of dolls that I want to make stands for. I have a Disney Store Aurora. I have a Disney Store Moana. I have a Wedding Snow White, a Applause Belle, and Winter Moon Pocahontas. That's not literally the stands they're getting. Been waiting to make them stands for a little while, and I don't have enough leftover unpainted baseboard currently to make stands, and I don't really want to go out and buy any. I'm going to reuse these. I have pictures of them on my Flickr, and honestly, the lettering's not the best for me, and they would be super easy to whip up if I did need them. So that's what I'm going to do. I have to take these apart. I need to trim this stand because you can see how it's taller, because this was made for the flocked Ken dolls, and they're quite a bit taller than girl dolls, and so they need more support. And I'm also going to take off these waist pieces because they're the old ones made with different wire. So I'm just going to take them off because I have armature wire I can use, and they're going to get covered in paint anyways if I kept them on. So I have a bonus stand for this video that I'm going to be making over. This is a stand that one of my Philip dolls stood on display, but I got a Maleficent and she needs a place to stand, and that Philip doesn't have his outfit. So I don't have any problems with this, but I'm just going to use it for Maleficent. It's a little bit dusty, but I'm going to be sanding it.
So here I'm removing all my old waist pieces because I'm going to be changing them to armature wire, which is far more pliable than the kind of wire I used to use. Normally I would try to salvage them, but as I mentioned, I don't really care for this kind. And I need to paint the dowels. I'm also going to be pulling the dowels out from the baseboard. You can twist them in and out. There was one that broke because my dad had made it and he had hammered it in place, so I had to change that. And in this clip I am sanding. I wish I had had new sandpaper. This stuff was pretty beat up. I had several different grits, but it didn't really do the best job. So I wasn't able to get all of the paint off, but the main issue was the sealer and then the primer on some of the stands that had been primed, that came primed. I don't recommend using that if you can avoid it, because acrylic paint does not like to stick to a baseboard that comes primed. And I had to keep doing this over and over. I like to kind of hold it on the floor with my knee and then just kind of rub it up against the floor. I find that that's a pretty good technique. I did used to have an electric sander that was my dad's, but it stopped working 8 years ago, so I've just done it this way ever since. And I think it's really important just to make the pieces you're using as smooth as possible. I used to be kind of cheap about it, and I wouldn't bother to sand down the edges and make it all smooth, and that's going to affect the final results. So it's worth this extra kind of annoying messy step. And I did it inside on the kitchen on this floor this day because it was cold, and I didn't really want to do it outside, and that way I could just sweep it up off the floor when I was done. As I mentioned, one of the dowels had broken because my dad hammered it in place, so I had to break it out and then re-drill the hole, which made the hole a little bit loose. So this is a new piece of dowel, and I put a little bit of masking tape just to thicken it up so it wasn't wobbling around. This was for my Snow White doll. I wanted her to have nice support, so this is just a little hack that I use, and it works out just fine. You just want to make sure that there's no tape sticking out. So this is my setup. I use a piece of cardboard to paint on, and that's my cart that I bought around my birthday with a gift card. It's really nice because all my paints are right there at like hand level, and I don't have to like go in and out of a tote or a container and look at them all. They're just right there for me to grab. And you can see I'm kind of thinking about what colors I want to use and which colors to put over the pre-existing paint that's on there. You can see I didn't get all of the paint off, but I did my best and it was fine. It just took a few extra coats of paint. But if it's primer, you really want to get that all off because primer is beastly with acrylic paint. I don't recommend it. And I do have paint palettes, but honestly, a lot of the time I prefer just to mix it on the cardboard because it's going to get messy anyways. And that way I have more room to mix things and I don't have to worry about cleaning out the paint because a lot of times I'm painting for several days on and off and it's kind of annoying to have to wash the paint palette. Plus, I have the dried paint as color reference when I go to mix more. So I'm just starting with the base coat. So these are going to be extra streaky for the base coat because there's some paint on there, and I'll start with the base and then I kind of paint up the dowel and then I move it aside and just paint the very top of the dowel so I don't have to touch it where I just painted. Here's my failed attempt at being artsy with my shots here. I did before and afters of the first coat versus the last coat, and the lighting changed because daylight savings. That's part of what took this video so long because I couldn't film when it was really dark out, and I also was having trouble seeing when I was doing like little fine details. It's better to do that in daylight. And Belle's stand is not included in this before and after shot because I had so much trouble figuring out what color I wanted to use. It literally changed like 4 different times, but I'm glad I waited until I found the perfect one. You can tell the paint dries a little bit darker than it looks when it's wet, and I had to do about 3 to 4 coats on most of these. Generally speaking, if these were like just plain baseboard, it would only take 2 unless it was like a purple color, but because there was some old paint left over, it took more. And the metallic colors always are going to need multiple coats just to get it really, really perfect. This is actually like a blue metallic color, but it's going to look more silver in this lighting. I tend to like to plan out my lettering designs that's based on the movie fonts beforehand. You can see my old sketchbook that's from high school on the left there. The pages are even way yellower than my other sketchbook that I'm currently using. I use it for reference because all of my original stand ideas were made in my old sketchbook, so I'll just kind of go through, roughly map them out so I have an idea. I do not always draw on the baseboard because it sometimes doesn't get covered with the paint, and I hate seeing pencil lines through my paint, and also the graphite once in a while can smudge around. So unless it's tricky lettering like Moana's O, I'll just eyeball it. I've been doing it so long that I don't really have a problem. And then I went over my sketches with a Micron pen. I recently decided to try out Microns because I've heard a lot of things about them and I saw them at Walmart and I thought, ooh, why not? This could be useful for fine lining, and that way the pencil wouldn't get smudged around because I keep these notebooks next to me while I'm painting the lettering on the stands as reference. That way I, can make sure it's as perfect as possible. Granted, on such a small scale, sometimes you do have to tweak the movie font and make it a little bit more simple because on such a teeny tiny stand you're not going to have the same ability to do all of that, the same shapes and stuff on the letters. But I really love doing lettering. It's something I've always enjoyed since I was a kid, and people tend to compliment my handwriting, but to be honest with you, I hold my pencil wrong. I used to pretend to hold it right in school, and then when the teacher walked away, I would hold it wrong. So for me, I have a lot more control, I think, than when I tried to hold it properly, and I can actually plagiarize people's handwriting if I want. I used to practice signatures and stuff just for fun when I was younger. So I really enjoyed this process, planning out the lettering. And then I kind of see how much space that's going to take up on the stands, and then I might have to modify my design idea, any little symbols or something I want to add to kind of work around the lettering. But the lettering is the focal point. And this was the lettering all mapped out. I did have a little trouble with Moana, so you can tell there's more smearing on the paper over by her name. I tried to film some of my painting little details and like going over the lettering, but honestly I have big man hands, so it was really hard to figure out how to place the camera, and I didn't want the camera getting in paint or accidentally falling off my art desk. So I made an effort to film some of it, but I didn't go through every single stand. My camera also doesn't zoom in very well. It doesn't like autofocus. It only autofocuses on the lighting, but it won't like adjust the sharpness, so I have to kind of like hit record again, and when I zoom in it's just kind of a nightmare, which is why I don't do a lot of like hair tutorials and stuff, because when I tried to do that in the past it took me like 20 times to get my camera to focus right. So this is just what I managed to capture. I tend to have a lot of trouble with my white paint, so I'll have to thin that out. I use like a fabric painting medium just because I have it from like painting t-shirts in high school and stuff, and it works a little bit better than runny water. And then I don't usually have a problem. I learned in the past though that it will get very clumpy very quickly. And Maleficent Stand, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it worked out just the way I wanted it to. These are little green flames with like yellow centers, which when you see Maleficent in the movie you get a lot of flames with her, and I thought that was really cool. That was one of my favorite parts of her when I watched the movie as a kid, and I definitely wanted to translate that to her stand. So you can see I did go over these little details many times, like 3 or 4 coats as needed, because I wanted it to be very opaque, and I outlined all of the lettering where I felt it was necessary. I really fiddled with the tiny details. It took me the course of like a week, and I would work on these probably every day, or when I had the chance, sometimes for an hour or 2, sometimes for 3, and I would kind of go back and forth and make little changes. Moana Stand, for instance, I had all this mapped out, and then I wiped it off because it wasn't centered right. And I actually changed my design idea for Sleeping Beauty altogether, because when I was mapping it out, I really liked the way these roses looked, and I decided to keep it like that. Having a tiny paintbrush is really important. It's the one thing I kind of spend a little bit more money on. The cheaper paintbrushes tend to lose their little fibers and get spread out much faster, and that can affect the sharpness of the lettering and the designs. So I buy these separately at Michael's. It is so important to seal your stands. You do not want any acrylic paint rubbing off on your dolls or their outfits. So I just use this gloss sealer. This is my favorite part of the process because it really brings out all of the details and it makes them look way more professional. You can use a paint sealer too. You don't have to use a spray kind, because you do need to have like an ID to buy any kind of like spray product, and I get carded all the time, so it can kind of be a hassle. But this is very stinky, so you'll want to put them outside or spray them outside and bring them inside, because it was cold on that day, so I obviously couldn't leave them outside to dry or it wouldn't have cured correctly. And in this segment here, I am doing the waist pieces. I'm using armature wire. I don't remember the exact width of it, but you can pretty much, if you're like in the store, you can kind of figure it out yourself, like by feeling the width of it and kind of comparing it to pre-existing doll stands. So if they have shoes that have a substantial heel, I would definitely have them wearing the shoes while you figure out where you want the waist piece, because it's going to change it a little bit. And then I twist it around. I did have more trouble because this is way more flexible than the old kind of wire I was using. The old kind of wire was like fence tie wire I got at Home Depot, and it was very rigid, so once you shaped it you couldn't like reuse it, and it was harder to work with, but I was so used to doing it I could whip up a waist piece in 5 seconds. But this armature wire is so much easier to work with. I was having trouble, and I was also measuring it out usually between like 6.5 to 7.5 inches. It's better to have a little bit more to work with rather than not enough, especially for guy dolls. You want to make sure you have plenty, and you want to fold the ends of the wire in with pliers, kind of like what you see on a wire doll stand, like a factory made one, just so the wire doesn't snag the clothes. But this wire doesn't have super pokey bits or anything. That's also the benefit of using a thicker, kind of softer wire. It's not going to be as pokey. And so this kind can be taken off, like I just did in this clip, and reshaped. And that way you can adjust it as needed, which is really, really nice. I love this wire.
So these are all the stands without the dolls on them, all finished up. It's the next day in better lighting. So we have Moana, Winter Moon Pocahontas, Disney Store Royal Aurora, Applause Belle, Wedding Snow White, and Maleficent. So for Moana Stand, I took inspiration from the color of her necklace for the base. That way there would be a pop. And then she has these little designs on her belt, which I incorporated here, and I did them in a red color to match her belt. And then I added some flowers and little triangles to pick up on the pattern of her skirt. And I obviously focused all my attention on the front of the stands, not, the sides or anything, because when they're on display, they're gonna be like wedged up next to other dolls in stands. So, I mean, with some of these, the fronts are even gonna be covered, but I still like to decorate them, because why not? Obviously, if you want to decorate the top of the stand or the sides, you can. Then, Winter Moon Pocahontas stand went through quite a few changes. I had different lettering originally and a different color, and I decided I didn't like that. So hers is this kind of like shiny metallic blue to kind of pick up on some of the like shimmeriness of her outfit. And I did a dark blue lettering with a light blue outline, a snowflake because she's Winter Moon, and then you're probably not really going to be able to see, but there's glitter on these little triangles, and that design came from her bodice. It's not like identical, but I was inspired by that to kind of tie it in, and it also has like the light blue outlining. Then for Royal Aurora, I wanted to do gold for her stand to pick up on the gold trim of her outfit. I didn't want to do pink because I thought that that would be a little bit too much, or white because I thought that that would be kind of plain. Now usually with my Sleeping Beauty stands I'll do gold lettering, but because I was using gold here, I did white lettering, and I thought of outlining it, and I did attempt some outlining, but I actually just liked the way the white contrasted on the gold of its own, which inspired this really simplistic kind of like silhouette of roses. A lot of my Sleeping Beauty stands have more detailed roses on them, but I thought that I wanted like the gold color to be the focal point, but I didn't want to leave it plain. Now, Bella's stand was a pain in the butt. It went through many different color changes because I don't have a lot of pink paints, and the ones I do have are neon, so it's kind of hard to like tone them down. I need to get more, and I also think that they're really old, so I had a lot of trouble with it like streaking, but I finally settled on this light pink color. I didn't want to go yellow like her dress because again it would kind of mute out with the color I wanted it to pop, but I tied in the yellow with these yellow roses, and I did yellow outlining around the words Applause Belle. There's also flecks of like gold highlights in the roses to kind of pick up on the shimmeriness of her outfit. Now, Wedding Snow White, she's a very, very special doll, and I wanted her to have one of the stands my dad actually cut, and this was one of the ones he cut for my Beast doll. So the dowel, he used to hammer them in instead of twist them in, so I couldn't twist it back out. I actually had to like break it and then drill the hole again. So I did save that piece of the dowel to shorter, so it'll work for a shorter doll. I had a lot of trouble thinking of what color I wanted to do because I didn't want to do like a cream color like her dress because I wanted something that would pop. So Colleen suggested maybe doing like a light purple, like these little buds in her bouquet. So her whole design is inspired by her bouquet. So I did this light purple with dark purple lettering, and then there's also white outlining around it. And then I pulled colors from her flowers in the bouquet, so you can see like there's kind of the hot pink and then slightly darker purple ones. And I also did some green leaves around them. I think that this turned out really well. I had no idea how I was going to accomplish it at first. And the Maleficent, I wanted to do this purple because, again, I didn't want to do black. I also have a lot of black Sleeping Beauty stands already. I thought I'd do kind of purple to pick up on the purple accents of this fashion pack, which this is not Maleficent's original outfit. This is a Disney Parks Maleficent doll from the Villains collection, and this is a 91 Classics costume and mask fashion pack. I wanted the purple accents, and I did gold lettering with black outlining to kind of tie in the black of her outfit. And then, I don't know how well you're going to be able to tell, but if you're familiar with Sleeping Beauty, you know Maleficent kind of enters the room with like all of these green and yellow flames, and that was something I always loved about Maleficent's presence in the movie. I loved how like creepy it was, so I wanted to do kind of that like creepy flame design on her stand instead of, say, like roses, because she's a villain. So all in all, I'm really happy with how these turned out. I mean, of course, I'm a perfectionist, so there's always more that I would have liked to change. If you want to see pictures of these stands or other stands I've made, you can check out my Flickr. I have an album just for stands, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hello, Editing Shelly from the future here. I wanted to ask you guys your opinion. Now, when I was putting these dolls and their stands back on my display, I came across the horrifying realization that I hated a lot of my old stands. Now, I've already redone a bunch of them back in 2014 because I started making stands in 2011, and as my displays evolved over time, I kind of had to change how I was making them, and I got better at painting and all of that jazz. So I've already revamped a bunch of them, but like my Pocahontas stands in particular were just awful. They need to be like sanded, and I left the primer I complained about earlier. Yeah, I left that on there when I redid the lettering in 2014. So it was a disaster. So if you liked this video and you like seeing me reuse stands, like recycle and repurpose them, I can continue to make videos like that. I don't know when I'll get around to it, but I am in the process of deep cleaning like all of my dolls on display. So as I'm going through each shelf, maybe I can take the time to figure out the stands I don't like and redo them. So if you're interested in this process and kind of seeing more of those sorts of transformations in this video series, let me know and I can do that. So yeah, until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.